expert committees are comprising of physicians and clinical experts. Clinical expert, not all of them 100% are not physicians, they are drawn from different parts of the country, different institutions, both private as well as public. That is the CDSC, Gross Controller General of India. Therefore, by geographical proximity, many of them are from institutions in Delhi, AIIMS and all, but there are representatives. Like ITJN also has representatives in 2 committees. So they are drawn from across the country. And they have to sit, quarterly at least once, they have to sit with the SAP. So now we come to the last part of the presentation. So this is something which those of you who are already in the ethics committee are familiar with. Many of our faculty are also familiar with. So I can go a bit fast and we'll treat it as an interactive session, a doubt clearing session if you have questions along the way. So I can skip this. We have already gone through the history. Now, the origin of the Research Ethics Committee stems from this point. When the World Medical Assembly, 18th World Medical Assembly, which convened at Helsinki in Finland, they gave their report. So that has become a Helsinki Declaration. And one of the articles of that report says that research must always be overseen by a multidisciplinary research oversight committee. So that recommendation came way back in 1966, but it is being implemented in India only from, say, in the new millennium. So a gestation period of 50 years, more or less, okay. But now we have progressed a lot. Okay. So all clinical research now has a safeguard of 3 ethical pillars. So one is confirmation to Declaration of Helsinki. So all of us should read the Declaration of Helsinki, although even if we are not actively doing research at the moment, and all our PhDs should be made aware that they should go through the Declaration of Helsinki. It's a simple 3-page document, some 32 points are there. Last major revision was in 2013. It's called the Fortaleza revision, because Fortaleza is a town in Brazil with the habit, and all clinical research must conform to the principles enshrined in the Declaration of Helsinki. Second ethical pillar is that the research protocol must be approved by an institutional ethics committee or an institutional review board. And the third pillar is that every participating subject must provide consent, and in India we recognize written informed consent. So these are the 3 ethical pillars, and we are going to talk about some details regarding the ethics committee. So what is an ethics committee? An ethics committee is any board, committee or other group formally designated by an institution to do 3 things: review, approve the initiation of, and conduct periodic monitoring of all biomedical research involving human subjects. Now the guidelines are saying that if your research load is high, you can have 2 ethics committees or even 3 ethics committees. And you decide. Some of them would be considering drug trials, another non-drug trials, or one may be considering intervention studies, other may be considering observational studies. But all research must be overseen, and overseen with a due process. So this is the body. Who will constitute the body? So if it's for Midnapur Medical College, Madam as the principal, as the administrative head of the institute, she will appoint the committee members. But then she will have no other role. Only if somebody has complaints against the ethics committees, then Madam has a appellant. So they will approach Madam. And every time I submit a project, they reject my project. But other people get their approval. For some reason, they don't like me. They're always rejecting my project. So I will appeal first to the chairperson of the ethics committee. And if the chairperson of the ethics committee gives me a reply or doesn't give me a reply, I am not satisfied with the chairperson either, I will appeal to Madam as the appellate body. So Madam will be the appointing body or the appellant body, nothing in between. She has no right to interfere in the functioning of the ethics committee. All the ethics committees of the institute, and Madam will have to bear all the expenses of and the logistics of hosting the ethics committee meeting. But beyond that, she will have not any role. So earlier, the administrative head of the institute, the principal or the director could be a member. Could not be the chairperson, but could be a member. But now the guidelines specifically say that the principal cannot be a member of the ethics committee. Now what do we submit to the EC? Projects involving pharmaceuticals, medical devices, imaging related studies, surgical procedures, medical record based studies, biological samples, epidemiological investigations, even social and psychological studies. So as sir was asking in the morning, any research, even if it's systematic review and meta-analysis, if it is clinical research, if it's not systematic review of animal studies, then you submit it to the ethics committee and leave it to the ethics committee to decide up to what extent or to what depth they will review the study. So all clinical research, there is no exemption. Now the different guidelines are more or less in sync, synchronized, and they're saying that an ethics committee will be a multi-member body and a multidisciplinary body. The idea is it must comprise a reasonable number of members who collectively have the qualifications and experience to review and evaluate the medical aspects, other scientific aspects, and the ethics aspect of the proposed study. But if I still have limitations, suppose a neurosurgical study has come to us and none of us have the expertise to consider this proposal, what do? We reject the proposal?
We will work on each particular method.
Exactly. So we will, for that particular review meeting, we will co-opt a person with neurosurgical expertise, and that person will function as a co-opted member of that meeting only. They will have all the rights and privileges like the other members. So if the other members are given a TAD of 1,000 rupees, he or she will also be given TAD of 1,000 rupees. Only thing, if the proposal goes to court, the person does not have a voting right. But they enjoy all the other privileges.
Maximum member.
Yes. Now look at the forum which is saying that an ethics committee must have a chairperson necessarily non-affiliated. That means not a part of the institution. Member secretary who would be necessarily affiliated because he or she will have to look after the day-to-day activities. The member secretary would be affiliated, and that at least one individual from each of the following categories. A basic medical scientist whose job would be to review, in addition to ethics, the scientific aspects pertaining to the basic sciences, the molecular aspects, the biological aspects, etc. And NDCT 2019 says that if it's a drug trial, then the basic medical scientist should preferably be a pharmacologist. Then at least one clinician, that means a physician whose primary occupation is in providing patient care service. Legal expert. A legal expert can be a retired judge, a retired advocate, or a practicing advocate. Cannot be a sitting judge. Sitting judge cannot be part of a committee. Then a person whose primary area of expertise would not be in medical or legal field, but a person who would be well aware of social issues. So that person can be a social scientist, an NGO representative, a philosopher, an ethicist, someone who is otherwise widely read in ethics matters, or theologian, someone whose primary interest is in spiritual matters. So non-scientific area. And then we have another non-scientific person who is called the lay person. But the lay person does not mean he or she is an illiterate person, does not mean he or she holds no job. It means a person who is lay so far as these matters are concerned. Not the primary occupation and not formally trained or versed in any of these areas. So that is a lay person in the context of the committee. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that is the minimum number prescribed. 7, and the maximum number prescribed is 15. So in India, the number of members of an institution ethics committee would be from 7 to 15. To satisfy the quorum for a meeting, we have to have one member from each of these categories. And the guidelines also say that there would be no duplication of roles. Okay. Sir, the member secretary.
Member secretary is micro. Yeah, chairperson is.
Okay. So, now we know if the member secretary is a microbiologist, then the member secretary cannot say that I also perform the role of basic medical scientist. So there cannot be any duplication of roles. If the chairperson is a surgeon, the chairperson cannot say that I am fulfilling the role of a clinician also. No. There should be no duplication of role. So you need at least 7 heads for the meeting. Okay.
And some person from other institute.
No, it doesn't say other institute. Guidelines say that at least 50% of the members will be non-affiliated. Not 50%. That means they should come from other places. And there should be adequate gender representation. It doesn't say 50%, but says that there should be adequate gender representation. Okay. They want to be diplomatically correct. Now, what are the responsibilities of the ethics committee? So there are some responsibilities before the study begins, like you will have to have a mechanism for receipt of application for approval. What do? We maintain a register. So as soon as a project is submitted, that project is given a number and a receipt date. So record of receipt of applications. Then we have to review the proposals. The review of the proposals and decision making regarding the procedure is usually through a meeting. Either face-to-face meeting or online meeting or hybrid meeting. Okay. Only in a very few cases where the possibility of harm to the participants would be less than minimum or only minimal risk to study participants, then the ethics committee can devise a mechanism to pass a proposal without a meeting. So they may constitute a subcommittee with the member secretary and 1 or 2 other available members that they will go through the proposals, and for very simple proposals, they will not do a full review. They will do a brief review or an expedited review and clear these proposals. Issuance of approval. So there is a format. In India, we have a format by which we have to issue an approval. So a letter would have to be issued, and the letter must contain certain fixed item of information. For instance, if you are not approving a project or you are withholding the approval, you have to specify in very clear terms why you are not giving the approval or why you are withholding the approval. Then the letter has to specify that during the meeting, who were all the members who reviewed your proposal. So the names, designation and role in the committee has to be clearly stated. So there is a format, and the committee will have to keep a record of all these processes. When the study is ongoing, the ethics committee may be asked to review, any amendments. There can be amendments to the study protocol, informed consent documents, may be asked to review serious adverse events, protocol deviations. So if there are variations or transgressions from the protocol, the PI is supposed to inform the ethics committee. And the ethics committee will have to look at the conditions under which protocol deviations occur. Then monitoring. If the study is progressing as planned, if informed consent is being taken, if all the confidentiality of the study subjects are made preserved and recorded. So while the study is ongoing, and even after the study ends, they have to review a study report. So all investigators are bound to submit a periodic progress report. Now the frequency of the report will depend upon the standard operating procedures of the institutional ethics committee. So at least you should call for an annual report and a study report and conclusion. Now report may not be a one whole 70-page document. It can be 1 or 2 page summary report. Publication related issues, compensation claims, and record keeping. So these are the primary functions, but in addition, 2 very important functions. Cooperating with the central licensing authority, and now we have another body cooperating with DHR, Department of Health Research of the Government of India, if they ask for information, and information, education, communication activity, IC activity. So all IC members necessarily must be trained in GCP principles. The training has to be renewed every 3 to 5 years, and all researchers in the institute must also be trained in GCP principles. So meetings like this will have to be a regular periodic feature for every medical institution. And very soon, I can give you some additional information. Globally, WHO is devising a question paper for ethics committees. So ethics committees will have to periodically sit for an exam and pass it to continue the registration process. So that question paper is being made on a global database and it is being tried out in India. ICMR is doing this role. So national levels workshops are happening for monitoring criteria for ethics committees. So that is also going to be mandatory in the future. Now, a few points to remember that to maintain its neutrality, ethics committee should not directly interact with sponsor. Neither chairperson, nor the member secretary, nor any other member, except in very emergencies, all communications between sponsor and ethics committees must be routed through the principal investigator. Types of review. There are 4 types of reviews. Okay. Most decisions are made through a full review. So when the committee says, as a committee, most of the members have to be present, quorum has to be fulfilled, then the proposal will be discussed and a decision arrived. This is a full review. Now, sometimes, due to time pressure, such as in public health emergencies or because of pressure of funding agencies, sometimes ethics committee members, without sacrificing the principles, have to do an expedited review, a fast-track review. And the SOPs must have written mechanisms of how this expedited review should be conducted. Interim review. Okay. Interim review, once a protocol has already been approved, you may be reviewing some amendments or reviewing the reports. So those are interim reviews. And finally, studies which involve less than minimal risk. What is minimal risk? If you draw a blood sample, that is considered as a minimal risk procedure. So there is risk of some bruising, risk of hematoma, risk of pain, but that is considered as minimal risk. If the study involves risk which is even less than this minimal, okay, then it is considered as minimal risk study and it can be exempt from full review. Such as if somebody plans to do a meta-analysis with data in the public domain, so that would be submitted to the ethics committee, and the ethics committee may either do a full review or can say that, okay, member secretary has seen through it, there are no ethical issues involved, so this is exempt from further review. So, what should the ethics committee consider before giving approval? Lots of things. Suitability of the investigator, qualifications, facilities, support staff, most importantly, whether the investigator has sufficient time to spare. Informed consent documents. Okay. So, if the principal or MSDP sir gives a proposal that they will be the PI, so the ethics committee may consider and said that, okay, everything is okay, but we do not approve the project because you don't have time to do it. They can say that, realistic, and you can't do justice to this project because of your other commitments. Informed consent documents, very important, and the input of the lay person, the legal person is very important in the informed consent documents, particularly in case of sponsored studies, where the voluntariness has been clearly explained, risks and benefits, responsibilities, witnessing provisions, so on and so forth. Okay. So normally, in our informed consent, if the person is literate and gives a signature after understanding the information, then we do not require a witness. Or if the person is not competent and a legally acceptable representative gives a signature, then a witness is not required. But if either the consenting person or the LAR, they are illiterate and they will only give the left thumb impression, then a witness becomes mandatory. Who can be a witness? It has to be impartial witness. So impartial means not related to the investigating team. A hospital nurse cannot be an impartial witness. Someone in the principal's office cannot be an independent witness. Similarly, the patient's mama ki mashi cannot be an impartial witness. Who can be an impartial witness? Another patient or the caregiver of another patient can be an impartial witness. So they have otherwise no interest in the outcome of the trial. Suitability of the protocol, lots of criteria here, will not go into the details. And they will have to look at other issues like advertisements or subject selection, case report forms, insurance to investigators. Okay. So nowadays, for sponsored trials, it is mandatory that the sponsors take out insurance. And the insurance cover two things. In case of compensation to be paid to the participants, that is paid out of insurance money. Or in case of negligence claims against the investigator, that also is paid out of insurance body. So NVCT has made it mandatory that commercial sponsors must take out an insurance policy, and the ethics committee must see that this insurance is in place. And then compensation in the event of trial-related injury, time provisions, etc., etc. So we have to consider a lot of things. And as I said a little while earlier, ICMR has tried to make the ethics committee's life simpler by devising certain established checklists by which you can see that most of the points are getting covered. Decision-making process, as far as possible, this is through consensus, voting in case of dispute. And voting occurs, chairperson normally does not vote, but if there is a tie, chairperson has the casting vote. Conflicts of interest. So now it is considered good practice that at the beginning of every meeting, all the members declare conflict of interest. Member secretary may have a project that comes up for review. So what we'll do, the rest of the committee will decide on the project. Member secretary may only explain, and then he or she will have to withdraw while the decision is being taken. Subject experts may be invited. Decision to be taken only in the absence of non-members. So no, because it's all discussions are meant to be confidential. So non-members should not be present. Reasons for adverse decision to be recorded. There must be mechanisms for appeal. Reversing a decision or discontinuing a trial is possible if good and sufficient reasons exist. Amendments to the study protocol, adverse events, new information, etc. will also have to be considered. And finally, all proceedings have to be minuted, with the minutes being signed by the chairperson and the member secretary. So when monitors or auditors or inspectors will come to inspect the ethics committee, the first thing they will want to look at is the agendas and the minutes of the meetings.
member can be a PI or not? The question was there.
Question was?
The member can be a PI.
Of course, member can be a PI of project, but they will have to declare conflict of interest. Say on today's meeting, item number 6, I have a conflict of interest. So I will not participate in the decision-making process of item number 6. So what we have done in our attendance sheet only, we have given a conflict of interest declaration. So whoever member has a conflict of interest, they are meant to declare it there. So record keeping is very important. Records to be maintained for a period of at least 5 years. Now with electronic means, you can permanently store it after completion or premature termination of a study. So all these things have to be recorded. In addition, constitution and composition of the IEC, CVs of all the members, SOPs of the IEC, national and international guidelines, copies of protocols submitted to IEC, all correspondence with IEC members and investigators, and the agenda of all the meetings have to be recorded and maintained. And you can jolly well ask the principal that give me 3 support persons without which I cannot do it. And the principal has to give it because it's for the sake of the institute.
SOP of the IEC.
SOP of the IEC.
Same for all institutes.
No, it won't be same. There will be institute to institute variation. Broad structure will be same.
That is according to
ICMR
ICMR guidelines.
guidelines. ICMR guidelines. And if your ethics committee is going to consider drug trials, even if it's postgraduate thesis, then as per GCP 2019. New drugs and clinical trial rules 2019. Yes.
How many members?
You count 1 member from each category. So 5 plus 2 chairperson and member secretary. That means 7 persons.
Layperson is mandatory.
Layperson is 1 person from each category is mandatory. So you may have 2 laypersons, no problem in that. At least one has to be present. You have 3 clinicians, but at least one has to be present. Subcommittee can be constituted for different things. For instance, subcommittee may be constituted for deciding upon exempt from review status. So it is not clearly mentioned how many members, but if your quorum is 7 members, the subcommittee must have at least 3-4 persons. Subcommittee is to be decided by the chairperson, not the principal or any other. So, in our day-to-day working, we come across many things. Special problems arise with vulnerable groups. So, sometimes our teachers propose projects with the students, involving the students. Tade mein study korbo. But we have to keep in mind that students, in the hierarchy of an institution, students are not in a dominant position. So if the head of the institute comes and they call a study, they participate for the internal assessment as much for it. So they become a vulnerable group. Even you are a vulnerable group. The principal wants to do a study and wants all teachers to participate. And can you say, no, I'm corona? You are a vulnerable group. So the ethics committee will have to see that in the context, who are vulnerable? Children, mentally retarded individuals, illiterate person, tribal or marginalized groups, student participants, institutional participants. Now, army te jara ache, jail jara ache. General or commanding officer kichu bolle tara shunte bad. They are always vulnerable in a hierarchical situation. Scientific aspects, many things can be said. Although science is not the prime concern of an ethics committee, as I said in the morning, bad science cannot be good ethics. So, even if a scientific review committee is present, ethics committee has the full rights to go into science. And there are scientific members in the committee. They can go into the science and decide that the protocol is not worth reviewing because of its scientific flaws. There are some special concerns regarding regulatory approvals, new drug issues. Suppose a company is coming and saying that we are doing a study for this drug, we'll eventually do for marketing. Why don't you do a study of the drug in an institution? As an academic trial, we'll give you the drug, we'll have no further say. But you cannot do that. A student cannot do a study with a new drug. There are ethical objections to that. So we'll have to look at new issues. A new drug does not always mean an absolutely new molecule. It can mean a new indication, new route of administration, new dosage form, and so on. If you are dealing with radioactive materials, there are guidelines of the Atomic Energy Commission. You have to respect that. Disposal of hazardous materials. Sending samples abroad. Now there is an added layer of complexity. If you are working with hazardous pathogens, then you must have a clearance from an institutional biosafety committee. Notun committee created. If you are working with stem cells, regenerative medicine, then conventional ethics committee is considered. You'll have to go to a stem cell committee for that. Sending samples abroad. Sponsor bollo kichu sample, blood sample amra bideshe pathiye debo. Analysis dinno. But ethics committee has to be aware that you cannot simply take samples of Indian citizens and send them abroad. There are Department of Health Research guidelines which have to be followed. Okay. So there are many other areas of patient concerns, like can you do a study with an Ayurvedic drug in a modern medicine college? What's your opinion?
कोई subject में herbal Ayurvedic expert.
So research has to keep an open mind. So we have nothing against plant-based drugs, but only thing we do not have Ayurvedic expertise. So in the team we must keep a physician trained in Ayurveda. Then the study can be approved. Okay. You are looking at a new avenue for treatment, irrespective of its source.
Sometimes one opinion of one Ayurvedic expert may not be satisfactory.
More than one, you can convey more than one. But to do a product, remember Dr. Bakshi said a phytopharmaceutical product. Phytopharmaceutical product is not an Ayurvedic product. It's based on plant extracts. So we have to proceed like any modern medicine product. But if it's an Ayush product, based upon certain Ayurvedic text, then you need to have an Ayurvedic physician in the team. Multiple studies. Okay. So same study has been offered to the medicine head and the pediatrics head. Can both of them do the same study in the same institution at the same time? So there are competing interests. The ethics committee will have to consider that. And in case of international collaborators, certain norms will have to be followed. Okay. So I've come to the end of my formal presentation with this slide. If there are any questions, many questions would arise, then we can answer these questions or we can answer the online questions. There are some online questions.
Is there a fixed time period for a clinical trial?
No. There is no fixed time period for a clinical trial, but the time period which is stated in the protocol must be justified by the design of the study and the objectives.
If any of the ethical committee member wants to do one study, can take the ethical clearance from the same committee?
Yes, of course. Yes, they can. But they cannot participate in the decision-making process. They can present the project, what it involves, but during decision-making, they'll have to withdraw.
Sir, legal expert person, lawyer, legally qualified person who is practicing can he be retired? Should he be retired?
Not necessarily. Practicing lawyer, retired lawyer can be incorporated, but a judge has to be retired. The judge is on the committee, he must have retired.
Representative from sponsor is allowed?
No, no non-member is allowed. Representative of the sponsor may be asked to come and present his views on certain aspects of the protocol, but he has to withdraw during decision making.
And What is interim review?
Interim review means a project has already been reviewed and approved, and you are reviewing that for some other thing. Maybe they have submitted a report and the report has raised a concern, so the member secretary calls a meeting, or maybe some protocol amendments are proposed, so there is a interim review meeting, or it may be a regular interim review that your ethics committee has a norm that all ongoing projects would be reviewed annually once. So that would be an interim review.
Thank you, sir.
What about the intellectual property right of a physical brand? I mean, suppose we have developed a new device or a modification of the old device. I have applied for the patent and I got it after 3 to 4 years. Then I applied for the legal term. And legal term is continued and one time is finished. Who will be the financial beneficiary? Either the institute or the investigator.
No, institute does not. First of all, let me address the first one. Intellectual property rights are very important aspect. So, especially in drug trials, whenever a new molecule is developed, or a new chemical entity is developed, or a biological product is developed, that usually is covered through patents or other intellectual property rights. So, every ethics committee member must be sensitive to this issue. So, the documents that we review in sponsored trials, many of them will contain confidential information. So, they must be aware of that. You should not discuss this with unauthorized persons, and they are not supposed to remove those documents from the institution. They can temporarily take them for review, but then they have to return all these documents. And the ethics committee will have to have a mechanism to dispose of these documents without breaching of confidentiality. Because these products may be patented products, so the intellectual property rights will have to be respected. Now, the second part of your query is that once a product undergoes a successful trial, it may be commercialized. Okay, it may be commercialized, and the benefits will naturally go to the marketing authorization holder. Okay, the institute will not benefit from it, but the institutional ethics committee will have to see that the principle of justice, the fundamental ethical principle of justice, is not compromised. Suppose you are reviewing the proposal of a draft, which is likely to be very costly. From your judgment, you know, likely to be very costly. And you see that the institute has come to your hospital. It's a public hospital where mostly 4 people come. They're not going to others. So you see there is a discordance. The people who will go into the trial are 4 people who are unlikely to be able to afford the drug. But the benefits of the drug will accrue to relatively rich people. Okay. So you have to say that no, the principle of justice is not being served. We will consider the proposal. If you consider our hospitals, private hospitals, the other kinds of patients will also be getting. So they have to be aware of the principle of justice, which essentially means that the privileges, the risks, the benefits are equally shared between all study parts. Okay.